What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about the new rumor for the next Mass Effect game, and it's pretty darn short. It was actually part of kind of a longer conversation about Starfield, and Jez Corden is the one that we're talking about here, a guy who gets a lot of things right, just to kind of throw that in. Of course, you don't have to believe this. Take it with a grain of salt, but he has heard, and he says it's a industry rumor, as in the way I assume he means is many people around the industry have heard the same thing. I wouldn't be surprised maybe if Jeff Grubb chimes in this upcoming week on it. So it doesn't have to be real, but it does seem like it's something that's being passed around, and it's that the next Mass Effect game is going to be ditching the open world format and going back to kind of linear-ish missions and linear, I guess, levels of the original trilogy. I think he says Mass Effect 1 and 2, but I guess all three of them. Mass Effect 3 I don't think is that much bigger in its mission structure than the other ones, and that's pretty much it. Very short. Like I said, it was part of a larger conversation of they're kind of going back to what made them tick. And he was talking about, well, Bethesda, you have all these articles saying that Starfield is just another Bethesda game. Why is that such a bad thing? And then he brings up EA, BioWare, and Mass Effect, that it seems like BioWare is just going back to what made them really good. So are they going to kind of get dinged for not reinventing the wheel and stuff like that? So that's why the rumor is relatively short. But you know what? I'm a huge fan of this, and I pray that it's actually real. Again, it's not for sure. He's not even for sure that it's real, but this is something that I definitely want to be real with Mass Effect. We know that a lot of the original crew, right, they're kind of like putting the old team back together. A lot of the OGs that made Mass Effect are coming back, and then if they really, I'd say, strip the elements that took Andromeda away from it and just kind of went back again to what made the Mass Effect trilogy very good. Now, more linear missions versus open world wasn't the only thing that kind of went astray with Andromeda. Ultimately, a lot of what makes Mass Effect and what makes it good is the storylines, the characters, the lore, all that stuff, I guess the different mythologies and lores that are going on. That's hard to keep going more than a few times, right? You already did it with a trilogy, and obviously I think it gets harder the more you do it. That's a huge part of Mass Effect, amongst many other things, decisions, choices, things like that. But this was a big one, and I think that this is ultimately going to help. And actually, I honestly do believe Jez has a pretty good point. I wonder if this is seen as a weakness in kind of like the larger gaming discourse. And I've kind of brought it up in the past too, when you have big open world games, let's say, right? And your game kind of just gets bigger and bigger. If you ever get smaller, which ultimately you might have to do, right, because of budgets and because of how long it takes games to do. Sean Layden had talked about this, right? And this is just one example, right? So your game gets so big, then you make, say, the sequel, you want to shrink it. Are you going to get dinged by not just critics, but even by consumers for saying, hey, why did you go backwards? Why did you go smaller? You were all about getting bigger. And that is, I think, a very real issue that consumers of games, gaming journalists, I think it is an issue that these people have, that you're not kind of allowed to go smaller and focus on the quality over the quantity. This would be relatively the same thing. Instead of mission structure being bigger, instead of saying every planet being kind of an open world planet, we're going to shrink it down. It's going to be more condensed. It's going to be more linear. They're going to kind of walk you through it. To me, that's a good thing. That's the strength, or that's one of the strengths of the best games in the entire franchise. To other people, though, you could say, well, why are you going back, 10, 15 years? You're always supposed to get bigger. Why are you getting smaller? So I could see it becoming an issue, but ultimately, I really do believe that companies are going to have to start doing this. And I think this is part of this kind of move by Mass Effect to, again, number one, go back to what they were good at. And number two, again, they've assembled a lot of the crew that have made the original Mass Effect games. They're used to it. They did really well with it. Why wouldn't they keep doing what works so well and then getting better with that? So I'm all for this rumor. I hope it's true. Ultimately, I just kind of want to see Mass Effect again. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.